He was found face down on a pillow, without lividity around his nose and mouth. The investigation into the death of television reporter Aidin Manzano is focusing on the woman last seen with him, who has been charged with his murder. Text messages between her and an alleged accomplice indicate a desire to keep the victim hidden, with her having a history of drugging and robbing men, earning her the nickname the Bourbon Street Hustler. Although she may not have anticipated a fatal outcome from her actions, questions remain about her role in the events. Text messages presented in court show ongoing communication between her and Ricky White, suggesting collaboration in their criminal activities. Danette was initially charged with property crimes and later with second-degree murder, after toxicology results emerged. Ricky White faces multiple property crime charges, but no murder charge, remaining incarcerated without bond. Authorities believe Danette lured victims with alcohol and alprazolam, while Ricky provided transportation. Messages found on Danette's phone indicated a planned robbery scheme. On the day of Aidin's death, their text showed a pattern of soliciting knockout drugs, aiming to induce unconsciousness rather than murder. However, the situation mirrored a prostitute-pimp dynamic, leading to tragic consequences. The combined effects of alprazolam and alcohol contributed significantly to his death. Sixia was found face down on a pillow with minimal lividity, and the manner of death is undetermined. His blood alcohol level was 232, nearly 3 times the legal limit, while his Xanax level was 25 nanograms per milliliter. A typical dosage of Xanax correlates to about 30 nanograms per milliliter, with overdose levels exceeding 100 nanograms, especially when combined with other depressants. Despite many overdose fatalities being classified as accidental, the ambiguous circumstances here warrant an undetermined classification. Ricky White currently faces no murder charges. As his defense argues, his lack of acquaintance with Dawn absolves him of involvement. However, the judge found probable cause linking him to Danette's actions, evidenced by their extensive communication. Ricky and Dawn are deemed a danger to society and remain in detention due to indications of a premeditated plan for robbery. This situation reflects patterns often observed in escort-related cases, where meetings can turn into robbery schemes. A second individual, implicated as a co-defendant, is currently not charged with murder, raising further concerns. A detective's recent court testimony mentions suspicious text messages and numerous calls exchanged between Danette and Ricky, highlighting the seriousness of the situation. The detective testified about suspicious text messages, including a phone code and money set aside, alongside 30 calls between Danette Colbert and Ricky White. There's a strong case for second-degree murder charges based on Louisiana's accomplice liability statute. An individual can be held liable not just as the primary actor, but also for distributing narcotics if those substances lead to someone's death. If the prosecution links Xanax to this case, that person could face charges, despite intent not being to kill. The medical examiner confirmed the victim, Aidin Manzano, died due to substances, raising questions about the significance of intent. While intent is generally vital for murder charges, circumstances like administering narcotics that result in death could lead to liability even without intent to kill, as seen in this case against Ricky White. His defense argues that his absence from the crime scene absolves him of guilt. However, the prosecution must prove these individuals acted in concert. Evidence suggests they collaborated to gain access to the victim's bank account and facilitated illegal activity, establishing potential liability for both robbery and the victim's death. Ricky White was initially perceived as a transient, but a judge revealed a relationship with Danette Colbert resembling that of a pimp and prostitute. Their dynamic suggests collaboration in a robbery scheme, which is common in such cases. This relationship often implies a transactional nature aimed at robbing a vulnerable individual. The collaboration between White and Colbert appears to target acquiring money or valuables. Danette's history with similar charges raises questions about the prosecution's chances in this case, hinting it may not be straightforward. The origin of the Xanax found in the victim's system is crucial, as it may impact the cause of death and the defendant's liability. The prosecution must establish a clear link to the drug, while considering potential contributions from alcohol or other medications. For a conviction, the prosecution needs to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And while evidence against Danette is accumulating, challenges remain on both sides. The discovery of the victim's belongings at Danette's home and the presence of Xanax without a prescription complicate the narrative, especially since no drugs were found in his hotel room. Text messages and phone records further add to the circumstantial evidence against her. What are your thoughts on the significance of this accumulating evidence? Absolutely, this situation involves circumstantial evidence. If the case goes to trial, the prosecution will seek to convince the jury that Danette administered the drug, asserting it could not have come from any other source. No Xanax or similar substances were found in his room, nor did he have a prescription, supporting the conclusion that it must have come from her. The circumstantial evidence leans heavily toward the prosecution, which may lead to a plea deal before trial. For a guilty verdict to hold, we must examine the defenses available for Danette Colbert, focusing on how the police obtained the evidence against her. We need to determine if the search was consensual or lawful. If not, we must challenge any warrants that exist. Excluding the Xanax from evidence is crucial, as it would significantly weaken the prosecution's case. Looking ahead, could Ricky White eventually face murder charges, given his current offenses are property-related? If Danette cooperates and claims White supplied the Xanax, he could be charged with second-degree murder. Conversely, if law enforcement links the Xanax found to the victim directly to him, serious charges could follow. This case is particularly troubling given that the victim, Adon Manzano, was very young. It's unclear why Danette, Colbert, and White targeted him during the Super Bowl festivities. From the defendant's view, Manzano was an ideal target, likely alone and more vulnerable. He was in New Orleans for work, and perhaps cultural or language barriers played a role in his selection. If intoxicated when he encountered them, he would have seemed like an easier victim, especially since the defendants may have believed he possessed money due to his profession and the event. Ultimately, this situation is heartbreaking, considering Manzano's tragic circumstances as a father who had lost his wife a year prior, leaving his child without both parents.